Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the User First Retail webinar. We have a variety of businesses on the line. As you know, retail is a very encompassing umbrella. So we have everything from clothing stores to restaurants to wineries to a variety of you. And we hope that we can enhance your education about digital accessibility, as well as answer some of the questions that you might have with the knowledge that you're coming in with. So I'd like to introduce my colleague, Josh Lochner, and I'm Reagan Bartlow, and we're happy to walk you through this presentation and then take your questions at the end. Again, thank you for joining us this afternoon, and we'll go ahead and get started. So our agenda today, we're going to go over some of the basics of what is digital accessibility. We're going to move into the potential market and buying power of people with disabilities. How can accessibility create an engaging experience and improve brand loyalty, and the guidelines around ADA compliance, steps that you can do to mitigate your lawsuit risk, as well as what is WCAG and what are those guidelines that will help you mitigate those risks. And then how do you test for accessibility errors, and how do you actually implement those guidelines? So Josh, what is digital accessibility?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm really excited to be here to talk with you all today. So digital accessibility is often misunderstood or not at all, or not understood under all dimensions. There's a kind of a big knowledge gap and a lot of misinformation out there. So, some of the market misperceptions are this is just a compliance thing. It's something that you just have to do that doesn't actually help grow business or grow potential customer base. There also is just kind of a technical perspective. If you talk with some developers, it's just adding in things like alt tags or ARIA roles, right? It doesn't really provide an engaging experience. Also, a lot of you know, in the legal space that, in the retail space, that the legal perception, right? So, how does the ADA apply? That it's just kind of a, something your business needs to do from a compliance risk perspective. And then lastly, a lot of people, they don't understand, do persons with disabilities, does someone who's blind actually go to my website and do they purchase things? They don't have any idea if that's happening right now. So simply stated, digital accessibility is ensuring that all users, including those with varied abilities and disabilities, can use your website. Other digital assets, they all have, and goods and services. So everybody needs to be able to access, everybody needs to be able to engage with your website and the same. We're going to untangle some of this confusion throughout the webinar for you. We're going to show you how web accessibility is multi-dimensional, affecting the omni-channel experience, and really focusing on the digital parts of the omni-channel experience. That there's more to it than just being compliant. And then we're also going to show you where to start and provide some considerations around your websites and mobile apps.
So why is accessibility important to your business? When you make an investment and commitment to inclusive technology, you'll be able to capture more users and maximize the revenue. You'll be able to care for all those users. By improving the user experience for everyone, you'll be able to increase your brand loyalty as well. So, and you're not going to find a more loyal buyer than persons with disabilities. And on top of that, you'll be able to comply with worldwide accessibility guidelines, which will help you reduce your risk of litigation. People with disabilities represent a very large potential consumer base, which can have a lot of benefits. But first, we might need to change our point of reference on what most people think of when they think of a person with a disability. Most studies, people think of fully disabled individuals. They don't take into account a vision spectrum. For example, somebody with glaucoma, or what about the aging population in the United States, your baby boomers? As we age, our eyesight and vision may change. Things like veterans might come back with injuries. So those are considered changing abilities. And there might also be temporary disabilities. So as a simple example, we invite you to read one of our most recent blogs, where actually one of our employees, she talks about the challenges she has living with a vision impairment. And her vision impairment was discovered when she was 7 years old, and it has grown over time. In that blog, she talks about how loyal she is to the websites she visits and the things she purchases. So Josh, is there an opportunity also to tap into this underserved market?
Yes, the buying power of persons with disabilities cannot be denied. Collectively, they have a disposable income of about $490 billion and discretionary income of $21 billion. So the market is very large, and as Reagan mentioned, these people, they tend to go back and are repeat customers of sites that accommodate them. So here are a few highlights from the National Retail Federation's Winter 2020 retrospective. These stats are even more true for persons with disabilities. They're very loyal consumers to brands that accommodate their needs. Reagan had mentioned our colleague Molly, who is visually impaired. In her blog, she specifically talks about leaving sites that are not convenient, but also consistently returning to those that she has a great experience with. Now, as a retailer, and when you think about the omni-channel experience, think about something like Boppus, right? And retailers are doing things, kind of taking this a step further, where you have a parking space for someone without leaving to receive items without leaving their car. So this is great when you think about someone who might be in a wheelchair that wants the convenience of having an item now, but without all the additional challenges of having to navigate a store, pick up the item, take it to a counter. So these are, great ways and parts of the omni-channel experience that are really beneficial to regular consumers, but also persons with disabilities really appreciate these types of convenience. So ensuring your digital assets are accessible and reduce risk of an ADA lawsuit or AODA fines in Canada, which is kind of new. So if you're not familiar with that, definitely check out AODA if you're doing business in Ontario or Canada. About 1/5 of these federal lawsuits are specific to digital accessibility. This does not account for state lawsuits, demand letters, and regulatory enforcement actions. For some, these lawsuits have cost millions in court costs and legal fees. The first company that really kind of kicked this whole thing was a web accessibility lawsuit against Target, which ended up costing $6 million. And it's as a company, they've made a lot of great progress on improving accessibility. So, most recently at the end of last year, there was a very notable court case when it comes to digital accessibility. It's Dominos Pizza versus Robles. So this case in 2019, every business should expect a rise in ADA lawsuits for inaccessible digital content. Really what happened is the Supreme Court decided not to review the case, basically enforcing the lower court's decision. And the one thing that kind of leaves it out there is it doesn't really say that, one question of this is whether or not, retailers that are online only, e-commerce, whether this applies to them. So it really leaves the door open for online only e-commerce companies as well to receive potential lawsuits. Already this year in January, we saw 155 digital accessibility lawsuits have been filed throughout the courts in the US. More than half of those are specific to retail. So, while we understand businesses' concerns that the ADA does not lay out prescriptive, steps businesses must do to make their digital assets accessible, there is a set of international guidelines businesses can follow to achieve compliance. The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG, from the World Wide Web Consortium lays out specific criteria that have been cited in many court decisions and settlements. Their methodology is best summed up by the acronym POUR. Let me give you a few examples of how these apply and can benefit all your customers. First, the P is for perceivable. So perceivable means that users can identify content and interface elements by means of senses. For many users, this means perceiving a system primarily visually, while for others, perceivability may be a matter of sound or touch. So now let's think about an example. So think about a video review of a product. So this is something to be perceivable should also have closed captions for someone who is hard of hearing. But this also benefits your other customers. So think about, you know, a new mom who's maybe holding her sleeping baby, right? This is a great feature for other customers as well. Next, in POUR, O for operable. Operability means that a user can successfully use controls, buttons, navigation, and other necessary interactive elements. So on your website, can you complete a checkout without a mouse using only the keyboard? How convenient is it for you when you're hitting the tab key, filling out a form, you know, your credit card or address or something online, and rather than having to use the mouse, you just press the tab key and it jumps to the next line? Like, those are great things that help everybody. Next up is understandable. Understandable is consistent in its presentation and format, predictable in its design and usage patterns, concise, multimodal, and appropriate to the audience in its voice and tone. So is adding an item to a cart and completing the checkout a simple user flow? Is it something that your grandmother or mother can do without having to call you on the phone to help them out or do it for you, right? And then lastly, robust. So robust is designed to function on all appropriate technologies. Users should be able to choose the technology they want to interact with: websites, online documents, multimedia, and other informational formats. So think about, you know, can I navigate a site and purchase items on your app using the screen reader on my phone or iPad or any other you know, platform that you might that might be available to a consumer on your site. So now we're going to get into some real, you know, some of the meat of some considerations as well as, you know, solutions. So to improve the digital omni-channel experience, let's start with your website from a high level to a more granular and continue on with the solution. So the first up is policy. At the highest level, let's start with your company's policy. What assistive technologies are you including in your scope? What level of WCAG are you trying to meet? How do customers provide accessibility feedback if something's broken or they're not able to do something on your site? Having a clear policy for your customers, designers, developers will make the rest of the steps easier, and it'll also help protect your business from litigation. Next up is design. So accessibility needs to be accounted for in the design process. Universal design is accessible to all and a best practice. Taking it a step further and creating a pattern library with code that has been assessed for accessibility will help you get ahead faster as you're building new you know, applications, you know, new refreshes of the website and things like that. So we touched on it before. Next up is WCAG. So the most recent version of WCAG is 2.1. This was released in June of 2018. If you've been working on 2.0, it's best to start including the latest guidelines to ensure you're not getting behind. If you haven't been following any of the WCAG guidelines, you need to remember that these build on top of each other. So before you can get to 2.1, you first need to start at 1.0. So QAing and or the development process, so DevOps, right? So don't wait until the site is finished. Check for accessibility during the development process. It's easier and more cost effective to fix something while it's being built rather than after the fact. Next up is QA. So you need to manually test the website with assistive technologies like screen readers. Individual pages might be accessible on their own, but once you put them together in a flow, blockers can start to emerge. And then you also want to make sure, mobile. So for many retailers, mobile traffic is higher than desktop. So don't just focus on desktop accessibility. Make sure that you check your mobile version, mobile responsive site as well to make sure it's accessible. And then lastly, something that we encourage everybody to do is add an accessibility statement to your site. It shows your customers you care. It lets those who use assistive technologies know which ones you're QAing for and work best with your site. So now we have talked about what retailers need to think about regarding accessibility, but not every company is far along enough in the accessibility journey to handle everything on their own. So let's discuss some solutions that can help you. First up is source code remediation. So writing or remediating source code is the best way to provide accessibility. But the business needs to be far enough along in their accessibility journey with developer knowledge and testing to be able to ensure it's done properly. So unfortunately, this one doesn't work for everybody. It just kind of depends on where you are. Next is audits. So this is the easiest way to understand your current state of accessibility. Automated testing alone will only catch about 40% of WCAG errors. The other 60% need to be checked manually by someone who knows WCAG and how to use assistive technologies. Information from the audit can be used to make changes to the source code and kind of give you that roadmap on what you need to do and where to start. Automated testing. So shifting left with accessible code development by using an automated testing platform during the CI/CD or development process is really important. Automated testing isn't going to catch everything, as I had mentioned earlier, but it will ensure that any new releases have at least a minimum level of accessibility. Next is kind of a pretty popular topic. It's third-party plugins. So if you're just starting out on your accessibility journey, or maybe you've received a lawsuit or demand letter, this is the best option to help you provide accessibility very quickly by integrating it into your website and providing accessibility for you without having to change the source code. But be careful, there are many companies, providing quick fix plugins, saying AI will just fix everything without doing any testing with assistive technologies to verify that they're actually improving the user experience or meeting WCAG guidelines. So make sure to find a vendor that tests with assistive technologies and provides you with an audit that shows what the software is fixing. And then lastly, one of the best practices, and it's good to do at all stages of the accessibility kind of journey, is if you want to manage accessibility in-house, then you need to ensure your developers receive accessibility training during the onboarding process, and then everybody receives yearly refreshers, covering more advanced topics. Training combined with QA testing will allow you to manage accessibility in-house and be self-sufficient. So now when we move into the other kind of aspect of the digital omni-channel experience, talking about native mobile apps, you'll notice in this slide that much of the retailer considerations are the same, except that you must be aware that for mobile, there are different screen readers, and each platform, which are different for each screen reader, and each OS has its own specific screen reader. So for iOS, for example, the screen reader is VoiceOver. For Android, it is TalkBack. So you need to do QA on the app using those screen readers to ensure that they are accessible. When it comes to solutions to improve accessibility, currently there is no simple quick fix for native apps. or automated testing platforms. What you need to do is fix at the source code level. So accessibility testing and manual user experience testing is the best way to uncover user experience blockers and understand what needs to be improved in the application. Lastly, you want to make sure that your developers and designers are trained and knowledgeable about accessibility, since this is going to be the best way to enhance the customer experience of your native apps. So don't forget about native apps. It's not just desktop. You also have to think about the native mobile apps, and we are seeing more lawsuits and things like that coming to native apps.
Thank you very much, Josh. That was very thorough and very informative. We're now going to move into if you all have any questions, because that's what we're also interested in. So I'm going to open up the box to Q&A at this point in time. We want to know what's on your mind and what can we help you with in better understanding any of this. Has anyone had any experiences? Have you maybe received a complaint or a letter? Anything that you would like to share with the group, whether it's from your own personal experience or a question we can answer about digital and web accessibility?
Or if you don't have any questions, if you have any feedback or comments on the content we've presented today. So I have one question that I get asked a lot is, if someone has received a lawsuit or a demand letter, kind of where to start. So with that, it's kind of a multi-phased approach, but initially I would say you want to kind of start with maybe an audit or assessment of the site to understand the current state. And then also look internally, what is the developer knowledge level about accessibility? What are you currently doing? What, if any, technologies are you QAing and testing for? So kind of starting there. And then once you have a clearer picture of where your business is currently at for accessibility, then it's much easier to figure out the appropriate solution. As I mentioned previously, if you're, kind of more early on, then maybe you want to look at a solution that provides more like accessibility as a service. If you are more mature, then it might be, maybe shifting left more and doing more integration with accessibility testing into the overall design and development process. Or, for those companies that are also a little bit more mature, rather than having accessibility as a service, maybe you have the skill set and knowledge to be able to just, take a third-party audit and be able to do the source code remediation yourself.
So Josh, I know one question that I've gotten from some of the calls that I receive is that when I purchase things from my phone, let's say, there is accessibility on iPhones as well as Droid phones. How does that, will that cover me? Like, how does that cover with the apps if somebody wants to buy something from, let's say, the Gap on their phone?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So yes, you're correct that all phones come preloaded with accessibility features. If you pull up your iPhone or Android right now, there's an accessibility section and you can kind of turn on some things. Actually, I turn on one. I have a young daughter at home, so I use some of the accessibility features to lock the phone so she can't, get out of YouTube or something like this, and start doing other things with it. But so all phones come with accessibility features, but that doesn't mean that your application itself is going to be accessible, or that your mobile site is going to be accessible. So they kind of provide the groundwork and provide that kind of base level of, these are the tools that someone can use if they need accessibility features, but you still need to go in and test and make sure that the mobile responsive site or that the native mobile app has been tested and works appropriately with the the operating system, the accessibility features within that operating system. And as I mentioned earlier, on the iPhone, it is VoiceOver. For Android, it is the TalkBack platform, is TalkBack. And typically in the US, what we're seeing is a majority of persons with disabilities are using iPhone over Android. So that's kind of an interesting statistic based on some of our work that we've done.
An interesting situation occurred with the Domino's case that I've gotten when we've talked to some retail reporters on the press side. And one of the questions that comes up and that Domino's actually presented was, I gave the user an alternative way to contact me. My phone number was provided so they could call me, in this case, to order a pizza, but in other cases, maybe it's, to order something online or to order something over the phone. And whether that is enough to satisfy, the Ninth Circuit Court said, no, it's not, because what ADA says is, and what other accessibility laws like the California Consumer Privacy Act and some other places say, is you have to provide the same accessibility as someone with that doesn't have a disability. So it's an equal use, and therefore it did not meet that standard. So I know that some people think they're covered by just providing a phone number. In that case, it was not, you were not covered by providing a phone number. So what you want to give is the equal accessibility and the equal use of your online and your digital services to all of your customers, right, Josh?
Yeah, you're correct in that. I mean, as a retailer, you want to make sure that your customers are able to get in contact with you, and you want to treat all your customers equally. So, if someone with without a motor disability or has perfect vision can use your website, then you want to make sure that someone else who may have an issue like that is also able to access it. And you're correct. The courts say, just providing a phone number is not providing the same experience or providing the same level of information and detail.
Level of service.
Unless you're really planning on a 24/7, 365, phone line, it doesn't even come anywhere near the level of, information and convenience that a website can provide. So yeah, people have tried that route to say, hey, we're providing accommodations, but it's not really the same thing. And from a customer experience perspective, people want to go to your website. That's just kind of the way the world is going these days.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Josh, for your time today. Thank you all who were able to join us. We hope that we've provided you with some valuable information. I want to invite you to also follow User First on social media. We provide additional information and the latest in accessibility news and information on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. And we regularly post accessibility information, tips, and trends. So we hope that you will follow us there. And please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Here is Josh's contact information. It's his direct phone number, as well as his email address. Please visit the userfirst.com website for additional information on anything that we may not have provided for you today. And we hope that you reach out to us and that we can continue to serve your needs going forward. So thank you very much. And this webinar will be available online for those of you who were not able to make it, and you'll hear this recording later. So thank you very much to everybody who was able to join us, and we hope you have a wonderful day.